Imagine waking up one morning and looking in the mirror, only to be faced with someone you don't recognize. It's not that the face is unfamiliar. No, you know it well, but it feels as if a stranger is staring back at you. It's not just the physical reflection that's troubling, but the soul beneath it. The person you see is a construction, a patchwork of expectations, norms, and promises. But what's worse is this. You have no idea where you end, and the world's demands begin. Who are you, really? You may have spent years, maybe decades, building an identity based on the approval of others, a desire to conform, and the relentless pursuit of an ideal version of success. You may have been praised for your achievements, your academic performance, your career choices, or the number of followers on your social media. But beneath all this, do you ever wonder, is this truly who I am? Here's the catch. You were never truly asked whether you wanted to live this way. The world dictated your path long before you even understood how to step off of it. From childhood, you were shaped by the unspoken demands of society. Be productive, be perfect, be liked. Don't stand out too much, but also be extraordinary. Live according to rules, but never break them unless the rules themselves are broken by someone else. This paradoxical dance was ingrained in you, and before you knew it, it became your reality. The most terrifying part is that you might not even realize how deep the chains go. You may think you're free, but the truth is, freedom is a construct you've never really known. You might be shackled by invisible forces so deeply embedded in your psyche that you've stopped questioning them altogether. And now, the question looms large and undeniable. How much of your life have you been living for someone else? What if breaking free from these chains wasn't a matter of physical escape, but a complete overhaul of how you view yourself and the world around you? What if the real prison is your own mind, constructed by the invisible forces of society's expectations? What would happen if you let go of everything you think you know? What would you find underneath? The tension builds, and you feel the weight of this existential dilemma. It's a question that might haunt you for days, weeks, or months, a question that demands an answer. But to answer it, you first must confront something far deeper, the hidden problem that has been controlling your every thought, every action, every choice. The truth is, we have all been conditioned in ways we barely comprehend. This conditioning, often invisible and subtle, seeps into the very fabric of our identities, shaping our thoughts, desires, and actions without us even realizing it. The problem isn't just external pressures, society's expectations, family's desires, cultural norms, though those certainly play a significant role. No, the hidden problem lies deeper. It is how these external influences become internalized. They become the inner voices that whisper in your mind, telling you who to be, how to feel, what to desire, and who to love. Carl Jung, one of the most profound thinkers of the 20th century, described this phenomenon as a false self or the persona. The persona is the mask we wear to fit into society, to gain acceptance, approval, and love. It's the part of us that plays the role we're expected to play, the role of the good student, the successful professional, the loving spouse, the perfect parent. But beneath this mask lies something much more raw and authentic, something Jung referred to as a true self, the part of you that desires freedom, individuality, and authenticity. Yet here's the paradox. The persona, despite being a mask, is not entirely separate from you. It has become so fused with your identity that you cannot easily tell where the mask ends and the true self begins. It feels like you, yet it is not you. It has become your default mode of being. And for most of your life, it has been enough to navigate the world. But at what cost? Friedrich Nietzsche, another towering figure in philosophy, famously declared, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." What Nietzsche understood was that human beings are driven by purpose, by meaning, and by the need to live in alignment with their deepest values. But what happens when that purpose is not your own? What happens when you live a life determined by someone else's why, and not your own? The result is not just an existential crisis. It's a quiet, gnawing discontent that eats away at your soul. You go through the motions of life, but you feel disconnected from its true essence. When you live for someone else's expectations, you trade your autonomy for the comfort of acceptance. The problem, as Jean-Paul Sartre pointed out in his existential philosophy, is that this leads to what he called bad faith. The refusal to acknowledge the true freedom you possess, the freedom to choose your path and create your own meaning. Instead of embracing your capacity to define yourself, you live inauthentically, letting external forces dictate your choices and actions. Sartre argued that in doing so, you are not truly living. You are merely existing, fulfilling a role assigned to you by others. But the roots of this problem go even deeper. If you look at the core of human existence, it is a profound paradox. We are born into a world with no preordained meaning, and yet we are thrust into a web of social structures that force us to find meaning in things that were never ours to begin with. Society, culture, and even biology push us into predefined roles. You are expected to fit into a mold, to be productive, to be successful, to follow the rules, and to conform to the narrative handed down by the generations before you. But in doing so, you lose sight of what it means to be you. Not the role you play, not the expectations you meet, but the person you truly are underneath it all. Arthur Schopenhauer, a philosopher known for his dark and often bleak views on life, would argue that much of human suffering arises from this very conflict, the tension between our true desires and the societal forces that demand conformity. He believed that the will, the deepest part of human nature, is constantly at odds with the external world. Society, in all its forms, imposes limitations and expectations that prevent individuals from truly expressing their will. The result is frustration, dissatisfaction, and suffering. Yet, even with these deep philosophical insights, the most profound truth remains. Many of us are not even aware of this internal conflict. It lies hidden beneath layers of distraction, work, relationships, entertainment, keeping us busy enough to ignore the truth. We seek validation, approval, and recognition, yet never ask ourselves if these things are truly what we want. And in this search for external validation, we slowly lose the ability to answer the most crucial question of all. What do I really want? This internalized societal pressure also plays on a deeper psychological level, one that is deeply rooted in our evolutionary psychology. Human beings are social creatures, wired to fit in, to belong, to avoid rejection. From an evolutionary standpoint, being ostracized from the group meant death. Therefore, the need to conform is not just a social expectation. It's a biological imperative. The brain is wired to seek approval and avoid disapproval because it triggers emotional pain and, in our ancestral past, could mean physical danger. This primal need to belong and be accepted can make it incredibly difficult to break free from society's expectations, even when we intellectually understand that they are limiting or false. But there's a darker side to this. The more we conform, the more we lose ourselves in the process. As Viktor Frankl, the Austrian neurologist and Holocaust survivor, so profoundly noted, meaning is not something given to us. It is something we must create for ourselves. But how can we create meaning if we are so deeply entrenched in a life that was dictated to us? And so, the problem is not just external, it is internal. It is psychological, philosophical, and existential. The deeper we sink into the persona, the farther we move away from the true self. The more we try to live according to societal expectations, the more we forget how to live authentically. But this is where the path to freedom begins. To awaken to this hidden problem is the first step toward breaking free. You must recognize that this false self, this mask you wear, is not you. It is merely a role, a performance. But how can you break free? How can you reclaim what was lost? You wake up each day and move through your routine, work, responsibilities, relationships. You check off the boxes that life has given you. Everything seems fine on the surface. The mask is still firmly in place. But as the days pass, you start to notice something disturbing, something you can't quite put your finger on. A growing sense of emptiness, a quiet void that only deepens with time. You feel detached from the world, yet deeply entrenched in it. You question why you're pursuing what you're pursuing, why you're living the way you're living. But the questions only linger, unanswered, unresolved. This is the unseen consequence of living under society's expectations. It's not something that hits you all at once. It's the subtle erosion of your sense of self. You become so entangled in the roles and masks you wear that you forget who you were before you started playing those parts. You start to lose touch with your passions, your desires, your deepest needs. Over time, this sense of disconnection grows, and you may feel like you're simply going through the motions, living a life you never fully chose. But the effects of living this way extend far beyond personal dissatisfaction. There are profound societal consequences as well. When you live a life dictated by external standards, you not only rob yourself of authenticity, you contribute to a cycle of conformity that perpetuates itself across generations. The more you conform, the more you reinforce the structures and systems that created these expectations in the first place. You become a cog in a machine, working within a system that prioritizes productivity over creativity, efficiency over exploration, and conformity over individuality. This is not merely a theoretical issue. The societal consequences are real. Take a moment and look at the world around you. High stress, burnout, anxiety, and depression are rampant. The external world is more connected than ever before, yet individuals feel more isolated and fragmented. This disconnect from true self is not just an individual problem. It's a collective one, and it's not just a passing phase. It's a cultural phenomenon that continues to shape the way we interact with ourselves and with others. On a personal level, this detachment often manifests in a series of cognitive biases that keep you locked in your patterns. Cognitive dissonance, for example, is the psychological discomfort you experience when your actions conflict with your beliefs. In the case of societal expectations, you may find yourself living a life that doesn't truly align with your values. But because changing the way you live would require confronting these deeply ingrained beliefs, you choose to suppress the discomfort instead of acting on it. It's easier to ignore the feelings of dissatisfaction than to challenge the status quo. Neurologically, your brain is also complicit in this process. The more you conform, the more entrenched these patterns become. The brain, in its effort to conserve energy, forms neural pathways that favor familiar actions and thoughts. The more you repeat a behavior, whether it's conforming to societal expectations or suppressing your true desires, the stronger those neural pathways become. This creates a feedback loop. The more you conform, the more your brain wires you to keep conforming. The more you suppress your authentic self, the more difficult it becomes to reconnect with it. Cultural conditioning compounds this further. From a young age, we are taught what to value: success, wealth, approval, power. These values are reinforced by everything around us: media, education, family, peers. Over time, these values become internalized, shaping how we measure our own worth. But these societal values are often at odds with what we truly desire. And so, we find ourselves caught in a double bind. To succeed in the eyes of society means to betray our own hearts. The result is a pervasive sense of alienation, both from ourselves and from others. You may start to feel like an actor in your own life, playing a role instead of living authentically. Even when you're surrounded by people, there's a nagging feeling of isolation. You wonder if anyone truly sees you for who you are, or they only see the mask you wear. It's here, in this deepening void, that the real tragedy occurs. The more you conform, the more you lose sight of what truly matters. You forget what it feels like to live with purpose, with passion, with intention. The questions you once asked yourself: what do I want? What makes me happy? What do I value? Fade into the background, drowned out by the cacophony of external expectations. And slowly, over time, you come to believe that this life of distraction and performance is all there is. But there's a reason you feel that subtle, gnawing emptiness. It's a warning sign, a signal from your deeper self. Try to remind you that you are not just a product of society's whims. You are more than this mask, more than the roles you play. Beneath the layers of social conditioning, there's something real, something profound waiting to be rediscovered. And yet, as long as you remain trapped in this cycle of societal approval, you will continue to suffer in silence, unable to break free from the confines of a life you never truly chose. But what if you could break this cycle? What if you could step outside of the script society has written for you? What if, instead of merely existing, you could begin to live again, authentically and freely? The rebellion, the path to freedom, is not as impossible as it may seem. The first step toward breaking free may seem simple, but it is the hardest to take. You must acknowledge the chains that bind you. This means waking up to the truth that much of your life has been directed by forces you didn't consciously choose. It requires the courage to stand still for a moment, to look inward and ask yourself, what do I want? Not what your parents want, not what your society demands, not what your friends expect, but what you want deep within your being. The problem is that we often don't know how to ask this question. Over years of living in a world that defines your worth based on external achievements and expectations, you have forgotten the art of self-reflection. You've learned to look outward for validation rather than inward for authenticity. But the only way to reclaim your life is by learning to listen to your own voice, no matter how faint it may seem. But how do you even begin to hear your true self again when it's been buried for so long under the weight of societal pressure? Here's the first truth. You must embrace the discomfort of not knowing. In a world that teaches us to seek certainty, to always have an answer, it's profoundly unsettling to admit that you don't have it all figured out. You may feel lost, unmoored, or unsure what's next. But this uncertainty is not a curse. It is a powerful invitation. This is the first step in the rebellion. You must embrace the chaos of not knowing, the space where the old narratives begin to unravel, and the possibility of something new emerges. This moment of ambiguity is where true freedom lies. It is in this void that you can start to reconstruct your own identity, one not defined by societal labels, but by your own desires, values, and experiences. You are not a student, a professional, a mother, or father. Those are roles you've been assigned. At your core, you are a person with your own dreams, your own path, your own choices. It's time to start living according to that truth. One way to reclaim your individuality is by interrupting your usual patterns. Take a break from the cycle of living in accordance with external expectations. If your life is structured around pleasing others, begin by making small choices that are solely for your own benefit. Go on a solo trip to a place you've always wanted to visit, but never dared to. Pick up a hobby that doesn't serve any social purpose. Painting, writing, or simply wandering in nature. The goal is not to accomplish or achieve, but to reconnect with the parts of yourself that have been neglected or forgotten. But the rebellion also requires a shift in how you view failure. In a society that worships success, failure becomes the ultimate taboo. What if failure is actually the key to breaking free? What if failure isn't something to be avoided at all costs, but a signal that you're on the right path? Many of the greatest minds, Nietzsche, Van Gogh, even the thinkers and artists of the Renaissance, were not celebrated in their time. They were misunderstood, rejected, and labeled as failures. And yet, it was precisely in their rejection of societal norms and expectations that they found their true voices. When you stop living for approval, failure becomes less of a threat and more of an ally. It tells you that you are stepping off the well-worn path of societal conformity and venturing into unexplored territory. It signals that you are living authentically in a way that transcends the roles that others have assigned you. Another crucial aspect of this rebellion is letting go of perfection. For most of us, perfection is the invisible standard we hold ourselves to. Society encourages us to strive for flawlessness in our work, relationships, and appearance. But in reality, perfection is a prison. It paralyzes us, preventing us from taking risks and embracing the messy, imperfect nature of life. The idea that you must always meet societal standards of excellence is a trap that keeps you from experimenting, from growing, from finding your true voice. Instead, adopt a mindset of experimentation. Give yourself permission to try new things without the pressure of being good at them. Allow yourself to fail, to learn, and to grow in your own way. This shift in mindset is liberating. It shifts the focus away from external approval and towards self-expression and personal growth. The rebellion against society's expectations is not a one-time event. It's an ongoing process of self-discovery. It's not about rejecting everything society has to offer, but about discerning what truly aligns with your authentic self and discarding what doesn't. It's a journey of uncovering layers of conditioning and revealing the person you were always meant to be, one decision, one step, and one moment at a time. To truly break free, you must be willing to let go of everything you thought you knew. You must be willing to question your identity, your values, and your purpose. The journey toward freedom isn't easy. It requires vulnerability, courage, and a willingness to face the discomfort of uncertainty. But on the other side of that discomfort is the life you were always meant to live. It's a life that is fully yours, not defined by anyone's expectations, but your own. It is a life where you are no longer a passive participant in the drama of society's demands, but an active creator of your own story. The real question is, are you ready to step out of the shadows and into the light of your own truth? And so, after all the searching, the struggle, the rebellion, you come to a realization, a truth so profound that, in hindsight, everything else falls into place. It is a realization that shatters the illusions you've lived with and opens your eyes to a deeper, more radical understanding of your existence. The truth, in its simplest form, is this: you are not defined by the roles you play, the masks you wear, or the expectations others place on you. You are defined by your ability to choose your own path, your own meaning, and your own values, independent of external forces. This, in its purest form, is freedom. You see, all your life, you believe that your worth and identity were tied to the approval of others, the applause of society, the validation of your family, the affirmation of your peers. But as you've discovered, these external forces are fleeting and unreliable. Approval is not permanence. It is momentary, tied to your performance in a world that is constantly shifting. It is like chasing a shadow, always present but never tangible. The ultimate truth is that you don't need validation from the outside world to know that you are enough. You were born enough. Your worth is inherent, not contingent on achievements or successes, not determined by how well you fit into societal molds. It exists in the simple fact that you are alive, that you can experience the world through your unique lens, that you have the power to choose who you are, who you become, and what kind of life you want to lead. This realization, though simple, is revolutionary. It's a shift in perception so profound that it redefines your entire existence. No longer do you need to measure your worth by the standards of society. No longer are you tethered to the expectations of others. You can step out of the narrative society has written for you and become the author of your own story. But even more profoundly, this truth reveals a paradox of human existence. The moment you stop trying to be what others want you to be, you begin to discover who you really are. The more you embrace your individuality, the more you align with your true self, the person who is not swayed by social norms or driven by the need for external approval. You find that the freedom you sought wasn't in the rejection of society's expectations, but in the acceptance of your own right to live as you truly are. This is a great paradox. True freedom is not the rejection of society, but the rejection of the need for society's validation. This realization is not a one-time epiphany. It's a lifelong journey, a daily practice of choosing authenticity over conformity. And it's not always easy. There will still be moments when the old patterns try to creep in, when the voices of expectation will call you back to familiar comforts of approval. But every time you choose authenticity over approval, you move one step closer to the person you were always meant to be. As you reflect on this, you realize that the change you once believed to be external, society's expectations, family's demands, cultural norms, were always internal. You were the one who gave them power. You were the one who held the key to your own freedom. The moment you awaken to this truth, you take back that power. This is not just a psychological shift. It is a philosophical one. In embracing your true self, you are living the existential freedom that thinkers like Sartre and Nietzsche spoke of. You are becoming the creator of your own meaning, the architect of your own life. No longer are you simply reacting to the world. You are actively engaging with it, creating from the place of your deepest, most authentic self. But perhaps the most poetic realization comes when you understand the simple truth. You were never lost. The journey toward freedom, toward authenticity, has always been within you. You were merely distracted, caught up in a false story, a narrative imposed by others. But in the end, you return to yourself, not in a literal sense, but in a deeper, more profound way. You reconnect with the core of who you have always been, and in doing so, you find the strength to live in alignment with that truth. So, as you stand at the threshold of this new reality, the question shifts. It is no longer, how do I break free? The question becomes, how will I choose to live now that I am free? You are free to redefine your life, to reclaim your purpose, and to shape your own meaning. The world may still have its demands, its expectations, but they no longer define you. You are the author of your story, the creator of your reality, and the master of your own fate. In this moment, You realize that the real question was never about escaping the chains of society. It was about recognizing that the chains were always an illusion. True freedom is found in the simple truth that you can choose to live authentically, on your own terms, no matter what the world expects. And so, the journey continues, not one of escape, but one of rediscovery. You walk forward, not as a prisoner of society's expectations, but as a free, fully realized individual, ready to live the life that was always yours to create. End your search. The only answer that matters is already inside you.